last summer, Los Angeles, like so many other cities, saw massive crowds take to the streets demanding racial justice. The catalyst for that call for change was a police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Now, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti listened, and he appointed the city's first ever chief equity officer. The woman who took on that role is Brenda Shockley, the city's deputy mayor for economic opportunity. She is with us today to discuss LA's Racial Equity Action Plan. Ms. Shockley, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for having me.
So what is the city's action plan?
Well, the city's action plan is rooted in the mayor's Executive Directive 27, which was issued after and during the wake of the demonstrations. The racial equity in city government is really what the Executive Directive focuses on, as well as the contracting, where the city spends well over $1 billion in vendor contracts. Organizations and businesses of color have been identified as really almost de minimis in terms of the amount of money that the city is spending.
But addressing these issues, there are critics who will say, well, this is affirmative action that the city is trying to do. So how do you respond to those folks?
To those same people, the advantages that you and generations of your family have received as part of the largesse of being an American, that same consideration and the righting of those wrongs, those things that were done to others in order to increase your wealth, that has to be addressed, that has to be corrected. So the mayor's Executive Directive 27 addresses the recruitment into city government, the hiring, the retention, and the promotion. And we'll work closely with the personnel department. Every city department had, pursuant to Executive Directive 27, to prepare a racial equity plan by last September. The executive directive was issued on Juneteenth, as we in the African American community refer to June 19th, and it was very symbolic because Juneteenth actually was very much tied to how some years later, some years after the end of slavery, legally, that people in certain parts of Texas did not even know. So that's the significance of Juneteenth, and it was particularly significant in the wake of the George Floyd killing that the mayor and the city of Los Angeles take a position, an intentional position around racial and social justice.
And in terms of city contracts, what can be done to make that more equitable?
Well, I think that the city process, what happens is that as we use that expression, and it takes on more and more meanings, the quote, usual suspects, in the sense that, as you know, the process to navigate the city, whether it's employment or whether it's contracting, whether it's services, tends to be fairly complex, and it allows those who have the experience to continually obtain the contracts.
Exactly.
And one of the things, if I can take a little liberty, is to say that equity can be distinguished from equality. Equality is when everyone is, quote unquote, in that context, treated the same. However, equity is about meeting people where they are. It is about fairness. And sometimes, often, being, quote, equal is not being fair.
You also touched on the LAPD, police, and there are some other folk who say the LAPD was heavy-handed last summer. So how do we address these issues in the city?
Well, I think you address them the way they're addressing them now. You have a full investigation. And we now, as we've seen, starting with Rodney King, how invaluable the video is. Because it takes away so much of the he said, she said. And I think that it doesn't necessarily, a video doesn't tell the whole story, but the video certainly addresses where there might have been some, shall we say, stretching of the story.
Yeah.
How long did it take? When did you stop? All of that. And, you know, I don't think it's a mistake that so many of these times when these things happen that are outside of policy, darn it, the camera's not on. So, you know, I think that Chief Moore is sincere. I think that he's walking that line, because anyone who has you want to support your staff, yet at the same time you have a commitment to the public, and that has to be done in a way that is sensitive, that is fair, and that is transparent.
Mm-hmm. It's you know, it's heartbreaking, the homeless issue in Los Angeles, and a disproportionate number of them are Black. What can we do as a city?
Well, I think that, and the mayor has said it over and over, we have to have a FEMA level response. You don't do as much as the money allows. You have to do what has to be done and find the money. You have to do what has to be done. And I think that while it certainly created a level of confusion and frustration, Judge Carter's impatience has also helped to remind us all that this is not how we live as Americans.
Yes.
And I can't pretend that the fact that the largest unsheltered population in the United States of America is located steps from here. And it is not just happenstance that 90% plus of those unsheltered people on Skid Row are Black.
We're running out of time, and I do want to talk a little bit more about you. Before you came to the city, you helped found Community Build. Tell us about that.
Well, yes, that was a very exciting time, but it was also a time where this time after George Floyd, we avoided what was the destruction and the like in 1992. After the verdicts came in the Rodney King beating, the first time we all could see for ourselves what happened. And I think that had a lot to do with when the verdicts came in, people who were already a tinderbox, people who were already just marginally a part of what was going on, that didn't have any sense of hope, didn't have any real support system, didn't have the training, didn't have the education. Sadly, the only power they had was to destroy. And so Community Build was created as an particularly African American, but not really that because our programs were for everyone, but it was a South Los Angeles response to the civil unrest.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Deputy Mayor Brenda Shockley, for enlightening us about the city's equity plans, and best of luck.
Well, thank you. And I think if I can just have a moment is just to say, it will take all of us, city family, outside of city family, but it can happen. It can happen if we all recognize that we have to tap into our humanity. And if we only see and only provide to others that which we have, we will be well on the way.